In March of 2008, a man named Philip Schoonover walked into a conference room at Circuit City headquarters in Richmond, Virginia, and made a decision that would destroy one of the largest retailers in American history. He didn't know it yet. The board didn't know it. The shareholders didn't know it. But within 11 months, every single one of these stores would be gone. 721 locations, 34,000 employees, a company that had once been bigger than Best Buy, bigger than Amazon's entire retail operation at the time, a company that pioneered the modern big-box electronics store, wiped off the map. This is the story of how arrogance, greed, and one of the most catastrophic management decisions in retail history brought down an American empire. Welcome back to Insightful Finance. If you're new here, this channel breaks down the rise and fall of America's most iconic brands, the companies that defined our childhood, dominated their industries, and then collapsed in ways that often shouldn't have happened. If you've watched our videos on Kmart, Toys R Us, or Sizzler, you already know the pattern. Great companies don't die from competition alone. They die from decisions. Specific, traceable, often arrogant decisions made in boardrooms by people who thought they were too big to fail. Today's story might be the most painful one yet, because Circuit City wasn't killed by Amazon. It wasn't killed by Best Buy. It wasn't killed by the 2008 recession. The story begins in 1949 in Richmond, Virginia, with a man named Samuel Wurtzel. Wurtzel was a Russian immigrant who had served in World War I, and after a haircut in a downtown barbershop, he heard something that would change his life. The South's first television station had just gone on the air. Wurtzel saw the opportunity immediately. Television was about to explode across America, and someone needed to sell those TVs to ordinary families. So he opened a small store called Ward's Company in the back of a tire shop on Broad Street in Richmond. Just one store, just selling televisions. By the 1960s, Ward's Company had grown into a small chain of appliance and electronics stores across the Southeast. But the real transformation came in 1974, when Wurtzel's son, Alan Wurtzel, took over and opened a new kind of store. They called it the Ward's Loading Dock. It was massive. It was warehouse style. It had every electronic product you could imagine under one roof. And it pioneered something we now take for granted, the big box electronics store. By 1984, the company rebranded under the name we all remember, Circuit City. And what followed was nothing short of explosive growth. Throughout the 1980s, Circuit City was the dominant force in American electronics retail. They had over 100 stores, then 200, then 400. By 1990, Circuit City was the largest seller of consumer electronics in the United States. Bigger than anyone. They sold more televisions, more VCRs, more stereos, more home computers than any other retailer in America. And here's a fact most people have forgotten. Circuit City was, for a time, one of the best performing stocks in American history. From 1982 to 1997, Circuit City stock returned an average of over 25% per year. $1,000 invested in 1982 would have grown to nearly $30,000 by the late 1990s. Jim Collins, the legendary business author, even featured Circuit City in his best-selling book Good to Great as an example of a company that had successfully made the leap from a good company to a truly great one. Circuit City wasn't just successful. It was studied. It was admired. It was the textbook example of how to build a retail empire. And then, somewhere along the way, everything started to go wrong. The first crack appeared in the form of a competitor that Circuit City completely underestimated. Best Buy. Founded in 1966 as a small Minnesota stereo shop called Sound of Music, Best Buy spent decades as a regional player. Circuit City barely paid attention to them. Why would they? Circuit City was the biggest. Circuit City had the best locations. Circuit City had the commissioned sales force that supposedly gave customers expert advice. But in the late 1980s, Best Buy did something radical. They eliminated commissioned sales. Best Buy let customers browse without being chased around the store. They simplified the experience. They put products on open displays where you could touch them, try them, compare them. And critically, they offered the same products at competitive prices without the high-pressure sales pitch. Customers loved it. By the mid-1990s, Best Buy was growing faster than Circuit City. By 1997, Best Buy passed Circuit City in revenue for the first time. And Circuit City's response was nothing. Circuit City executives were convinced their commissioned sales model was superior. They believed customers wanted expert guidance. They believed their salespeople were the company's competitive advantage. But it wasn't just the sales model. Circuit City had bigger problems brewing. In 1993, Circuit City made a decision that, on paper, looked brilliant. They launched a spin-off company called CarMax, a Circuit City-style superstore for used cars. CarMax was an enormous success. It revolutionized the used car industry the same way Circuit City had revolutionized electronics. But here's the problem. Circuit City spent the better part of a decade focused on building CarMax, while their core electronics business was being slowly eaten alive by Best Buy. By 2002, Circuit City spun off CarMax as a separate company, taking in billions of dollars. But the core Circuit City electronics business had stagnated. Their stores looked dated. Their inventory systems were outdated, and their customer experience was being lapped by Best Buy on one side, and a small online retailer called Amazon on the other. And then came the worst decision of all. On March 28, 2007, Circuit City CEO Philip Schoonover made an announcement that shocked the retail industry. Circuit City was going to fire its 3,400 highest-paid sales associates. Not because they were underperforming, not because the stores were overstaffed, not because of layoffs in a downturn. They were being fired specifically because they were making too much money. Let me explain how this worked. Many of these employees had been with Circuit City for 10, 15, 20 years. They were the experts. They knew the products. They built relationships with customers. They earned commissions and salary increases over time. And by 2007, they were earning, on average, a few dollars per hour more than newer hires. Schoonover's solution? Fire them all. Then immediately invite them to reapply for their old jobs at a lower starting wage. Imagine working somewhere for 15 years. You know every product. You have repeat customers who ask for you by name. You're considered one of the best in the company. And one Wednesday morning, your manager calls you into a back room and tells you that you're being let go, not because of anything you did, but because you make too much money. And then, with a straight face, they hand you a piece of paper and tell you that you're welcome to apply for your old job back, at $10 an hour less. The estimated savings? About $110 million per year. The estimated cost? The company. Because here's what Circuit City executives failed to understand. Those 3,400 employees weren't a cost center. They were the product. They were the reason customers came to Circuit City instead of buying online. They were the expertise that justified paying full retail price instead of clicking add to cart on Amazon. And the moment they were gone, customers noticed. Immediately. Walk into any Circuit City after March 2007, and what you'd find was a sea of inexperienced, underpaid teenagers and 20-somethings who didn't know the difference between a plasma TV and an LCD. The sales floor became chaotic, wait times exploded, returns and complaints surged, and shoppers, predictably, started taking their business elsewhere. Same-store sales fell. Quarter after quarter, the stock price collapsed. From over $30 a share in 2006 to under $5 by mid-2008. And that was before the financial crisis even hit. By the time Lehman Brothers collapsed in September 2008 and the global economy entered freefall, Circuit City was already terminally ill. The recession just delivered the final blow. On November 10, 2008, Circuit City filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company that had once been studied as a model of corporate excellence was now begging the courts to keep it alive. At the time of filing, Circuit City had 721 stores, $3.4 billion in assets, and over 34,000 employees. Management told the world they would reorganize. They would emerge stronger. They would close some underperforming locations and refocus on what made them great. It didn't work. The 2008 holiday shopping season, the most important quarter for any electronics retailer, was a disaster. Customers, hearing rumors of bankruptcy, refused to buy expensive electronics from a store that might not be around to honor warranties. Vendors, fearing they wouldn't be paid, demanded cash upfront for inventory. And competitors, sensing weakness, slashed prices to bleed Circuit City dry. By January 2009, Circuit City had run out of options. On January 16, 2009, the company announced it would liquidate. All 567 remaining stores would close. All 34,000 employees would lose their jobs. By March 8, 2009, every Circuit City store in America was closed. A 60-year-old company, a pioneer of American retail, a stock that had once been the toast of Wall Street, gone. And here's the cruelest irony of all. 6 months earlier, Best Buy had offered to buy Circuit City. Some estimates suggest the offer was around $1 billion. Circuit City's board rejected it. They believed their company was worth more. It wasn't. Within months, those same buildings were being leased to Walmart, Best Buy, and Burlington Coat Factory at fire sale rates. The Circuit City brand name was sold off to a liquidator for a fraction of its former value. 34,000 families lost their primary income, right at the start of the worst recession in nearly a century. All because of decisions made in a boardroom in Richmond, Virginia. There are 3 big lessons in the Circuit City story, and they apply to every company in America right now. Lesson 1. Your employees are not a cost. They are the product. When Circuit City fired its most experienced sales staff, executives saw $110 million in annual savings on a spreadsheet. What they didn't see was the value those employees created. The customer loyalty, the expertise, the trust, the reason anyone walked through the front door instead of clicking on Amazon. The moment that value disappeared, the company was finished. Lesson 2. Spreadsheet thinking will destroy great companies. Philip Schoonover wasn't a fool. He was a Harvard MBA. He had spent decades in retail. He looked at the numbers, identified labor as the largest controllable cost, and made what looked like a rational decision. But great businesses aren't run by spreadsheets. They're run by understanding what actually creates value for the customer. And nobody at Circuit City Corporate seemed to understand that anymore. Lesson 3. Past success guarantees nothing. Circuit City was featured in Good to Great. They had decades of dominance. They had pioneered an entire retail category. None of it mattered. In a single decade, a 60-year-old empire was reduced to a punchline. The same fate has now claimed Toys R Us, Kmart, Sears, Radio Shack, Borders, Linens and Things, and dozens of others. It's coming for more. Right now, in 2026, we're watching the same patterns play out at retailers like Walgreens, CVS, and Kohl's. The warning signs are identical. Cost cutting that destroys the customer experience. Boards convinced their brand is too iconic to fail. Executives chasing short-term Wall Street wins instead of long-term customer value. The Circuit City story isn't ancient history. It's a preview. And the next time you walk past an empty big box store with the lights off and the parking lot empty, remember, somewhere in a boardroom, a few years before that store went dark, a small group of people in expensive suits made a decision that seemed perfectly reasonable on a spreadsheet. Circuit City didn't have to die. Best Buy didn't kill it. Amazon didn't kill it. The recession didn't kill it. Circuit City killed Circuit City, with one of the most arrogant, short-sighted decisions in American business history. And the saddest part? The 3,400 employees they fired in March of 2007 were the only thing standing between the company and the cliff. The moment they walked out the door with cardboard boxes in their hands, the countdown started. 11 months later, the empire was gone. If you enjoyed this story, you're going to love what's coming next on the channel. We're working on the rise and fall of Mervyn's, Howard Johnson's, Borders books, and the brands disappearing right now in 2026 that nobody is talking about yet. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button right now. It's free, it takes about half a second, and it tells YouTube to send you every new video the moment it drops. You won't miss a single rise. You won't miss a single fall. Drop a comment below and tell me, which fallen retailer do you want covered next? Was it Circuit City? Was it Radio Shack? Was it the mall in your hometown that's now an Amazon distribution center? I read every comment, and the most requested brands always get bumped to the top of the production list. Thanks for watching Insightful Finance. I'll see you in the next one.